folks. It's 6:01, so somebody needs to slap me in the face and remind me to start on time. Yeah, people will be lining up for that job. All right, as always, we're going to start with a prayer. And since the only pastor we have here is my friend, who else?
Ron.
Oh, well,
Yeah, can you do it?
Ron. Yes, can we get you to lead us in prayer? Thanks for reminding me.
Want me to come up there?
Wherever you're most comfortable. Just do stand so everyone can hear you. This is Ron Walter, for those of you that don't know him.
Father, we thank you for this meeting. We thank you for this time. We thank you that we have freedom in this country to choose our own officials. We thank you for the liberties we have and the blessings that you bestowed upon this country. Lord, we ask that you forgive us in this country for our sins. And I pray that we be a leavening influence for good in this country, that we help people get back to following your ways and doing what's right. I ask that you bless Jaden as he speaks tonight. May he be comfortable and enjoy it, but at the same time, may he be zealous for doing good things. And we ask that you bless him as he tries to get elected to office in this country. Once again, we thank you for your many blessings and give you the glory. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. And if we could have our veteran lead us in the pledge, I would appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. All right, I got a few little housekeeping announcements, and then I'll turn the meeting over to our speaker. First off, of course, there he is. Come here, come on up here. Everyone can see him. Everybody, I want you to, this is Truett. Tomorrow is his 6th birthday. So we're all going to give him a hand, and then we're all going to sing happy birthday, okay? All right, let's go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Truett. Happy birthday to you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Truett. Happy birthday. All right. Couple of announcements. I've got one of the groups that I started years ago, and I haven't really done much with it the last several years, but I'm going to resurrect it. It's called Informed and Involved Tonkawa Citizens. And the Informed and Involved Tonkawa Citizens are sponsoring 2 candidate forums this year. The first one is going to be for the Senate, so that will be our speaker, Jaden, and our incumbent Senator, Bill Coleman. And that's going to be at the Tonkawa Church of Christ, which is on the northeast corner of Public and North Avenue. It's the white building immediately east of the parking lot for the football stadium. And that's going to be on May 30th. That's a Saturday at 1 p.m. So spread the word. We're going to have both candidates there. Each one of them will have a chance to speak, and then we'll have extensive Q&A. So I hope we get a good crowd. This is an important election, and since we're in Oklahoma, the June 16th primary may be the most important election, because it's almost always Republicans win, thank you, Lord. So, then the week after that, on June 5, we will be having the candidate forum for the House District 38 seat. That's the seat that John Pfeiffer has now. And he's terming out, and he's running for Labor Secretary. I'm assuming he's going to start his campaign one of these days. Anyway, So we've got, right now, we have 5 people that have said they're gonna run. Now, I won't be making any public announcements on this until the first week of April, because April 4th is when these candidates have to go to the Secretary of State, pay their money. I think it's $500. What's it cost y'all for Senate? You know?
No, it's not much.
Okay. Anyway, we won't know for sure who in fact is going to be a candidate until they sign up with the state. Right now, it's just talk. And if anybody in here needs to know the value of politicians talk, you can come talk to me afterwards. So, but anyway, spread the word. I hope we get a good turnout, and it'd be a good way to get to know the people that are going to be representing us in the case of the Senate for the next 4 years, and in the case of the House for the next 2 years. And in many ways, the lower on level of government that you go, state, county, municipal, each layer that you go down, that next layer down has more direct influence on your life day to day than the one above it. The people in Washington have a lot to do with their lives, but it's nothing like the local people do. So, has anybody else got any announcements that they'd like to? Yeah. Everybody, this is Joe Bacon. He's chair of the K County GOP.
This month, we're having our meeting on February 26th at the Pioneer Technology Center. It's 4th Thursday, 7 p.m. Our guest speaker this month is Jake Merrick.
Okay.
So, anybody wants to come listen to Jake talk, we just, Chris just had Charles McCall at the ProTech, was it last week?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think McCall may be coming back possibly in March, but this month it's Jake Merrick.
Yeah, he's going to be at my Saturday meeting in March.
Okay, all right.
He was here a couple of months ago, but I was out sick.
Right.
So, in fact, my Saturday meeting this month is on the 28th, and it is, on the 28th, and Kevin West is going to be the speaker. He spoke here a month or two ago, and he's from the House of Representatives, and he's also running for Labor Secretary. He was a huge OK2A supporter when he was under the dome. He was responsible for a lot of our pro-legislation. Constitutional carry was one of his bills. So anyway, if anybody's got any questions about any of those, I think everybody in town has my phone number. If not, I'll give it to you. So, any other announcements? Okay, folks, I'm going to turn it over to Jaden, but I'm going to introduce him just a bit for those of you here in Tonopah that don't have the pleasure of knowing him. I've known him since he was 16 or 17 years old. He was a regular attendee back then to the K County GOP monthly meeting, Republican meetings, when it used to be over at the Lutheran Church. And even as a high school kid, he was an impressive young man. That was one of the things that really impressed me, because we're dealing with a kid, for God's sakes. And he's intelligent, he's well-spoken, he's well-read, so far, he's been on the right side of every political issue I've heard him talk about. And anybody that agrees with me has got to be right, right? When he got out of high school, he went to work for Amazon. And I thought, oh no, they're going to implant the mind virus in his head down there at Amazon. And if anything, he's more conservative now than he was then. And I just think the world of him. I can't say enough good about him. I wish I'd have been half that sharp when I was his age. I was hanging around drinking beer and partying when I was his age. Anyway, very good. It's your deal. He's going to be our only speaker tonight, so we got plenty of time, and he'll be taking questions. And I'm going to get out of your way.
All right, thank you, Terry. Yeah, I just want to start by thanking Terry. For those of you that don't know, and I know we've got a few people here that are this is their first time. Terry runs the OK2A, which is Oklahoma Second Amendment Association, and they have 2 meetings a month. One is on the first Tuesday here, and the other one is on Saturdays over in Ponca City. And that's 2 meetings a month. He's also very involved with OK2A at the state level, especially in the western part of Oklahoma. So we can just give a round of applause to Terry. All of those positions are voluntary, unpaid, doesn't even cover expenses. And as you heard him, he's already organized 2 more forums for this area for both the representative race later on in June and the Senate, which I will be part of May 30th, right? Is that the date we decided on?
Yeah, May 30th,
So,
1 p.m.
May 30th at 1 p.m. back here in Tonkawa. Me and my opponent, Bill Coleman, will be there for a forum. We'll each get 10 or 15 minutes to talk about ourselves, and then we'll have the rest of the time to do Q&A with whatever the voters want to talk about by that point in the election cycle. But before I get deep into the speech, I'll just remind everybody tonight there's Q&A also. So I've kind of packed the room as a little bit of a home crowd. Half of them are relatives of mine, so we'll do that, but we will have Q&A. So don't be shy. Once I finally shut up, I want to hear more so what's on your mind and let you know my stance on it, more than I would like to just stand up here and talk about what I think is important. Because really, at the end of the day, it's what you all think is important in your representatives and your senators. And so, like Terry mentioned, I'm from Ponca City, grew up there my whole life, and then went down to Oklahoma State for college and thought I was really sharp and decided to graduate in 3 years instead of 4. And what happened is I did that, and it happened to be the same year that COVID hit the world. And so there I was graduating Oklahoma State as a new young adult, and COVID was everywhere. And so the job market was rough, especially for an agribusiness major. And the only place that was really hiring for any good money was Amazon. And as Terry mentioned at the time, he wasn't the only one thinking that, oh, maybe we shouldn't go to work for one of the more liberal companies in the world. But they had a good offer, and I took it and ran with it, and I spent almost 6 years with them. And Terry's right, the longer you work at a company like that, the more conservative you become. And part of that work led me to some very blue cities. I spent several months in Las Vegas, several months in San Diego. As a matter of fact, our facility in San Diego, you can go up in the top floor of it, and you're looking down into Tijuana because we're that close to the border. And 70% of that building's employees were Mexican nationals that traveled across every day to work there. And then I spent almost a year working in Chicago, south side of Chicago. And so if you didn't know, a lot of the right-minded people that live up there call it Chirac. And that's true, because if you go to a certain part of the city, you'll hear more gunshots than you do in Afghanistan half the time. And so 2 weeks into that building, I was up there as a senior manager. And we had a shooting on campus there. We had someone drive their car through the front door. We had a stabbing. I mean, it was quite the eye-opening experience to see what Democrat liberal policies can do to a city, and more importantly, what it can do to its people. And a lot of good people, hard-working people there, but they're infested with what Terry called a minute ago of the mind virus, and it's a true thing, unfortunately. TDS is another word for it, if you all aren't familiar with that term. But a little bit about policies and why I got into this. I'm 26 years old now, I'll be 27 here in a couple months in April. And I have the privilege tonight of all 3 of my nephews being here. So I've got 2 little Langstons here, and then Banks is over there in the back yelling at me. And there he is. And they are 1, 3, and almost 6. And there I was going from big city to big city with the largest company in the world, making good money and stock options and bonuses and everything else, and doing good for myself. And I got to thinking, I said, okay, what is all that worth if in 20 years they don't have a country to live in? Because they will have been overrun with foreigners and liberal Democrat policies across the Horn. And I got to thinking about it, and I am pretty good with my money. I think all my relatives here will call me a tightwad, a little frugal. But that being said, it's put me in a good position to where I'm able to run this campaign not only unemployed, because I resigned in December to put my full time and effort into this campaign. That's how serious I am about this. And to beat an 8-year incumbent, you almost have to be full-time campaigning. most of the consultant class and a lot of the more politically minded people in the state told me I was 6 months behind already when I started. And I don't believe that because we're going to put in the work and we're going to spend the money where we need to and not on frivolous things we don't need to. And by winning the votes of people like you all in this room, I think we'll get it done. But with that being said, from now until June, this campaign is going to knock on over 5,000 doors. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the district, Senate District 10 starts over here in Tonkawa at the county line on the other side of I-35. It takes all of Ponca City, all of Newkirk, and then the entirety of Osage County. And we actually bleed into Tulsa County over at Sand Springs, at Owasso, and Collinsville. So there's a lot of ground to cover. Tonkawa, Newkirk, and Ponca are kind of our home field advantage in a way because we've got good connections there, good people like Terry in this area that give us platforms to speak from. But over in the Osage County area, we've got Pahuska, Skiatook, Sperry. Put it in perspective for you, in Sand Springs, there are more registered Republican voters in the district than there are in Newkirk and Tonkawa combined. And so I'll be spending plenty of time in that neck of the woods before June 16th gets here, and so on and so forth. But to walk away from all that money and do this campaign, to be honest with you, I didn't really give it a second thought. I had the resources. God's blessed me enough to make that much money this early on in life, and I just knew that it was the right thing to do. Whether we win this election or not, the progress we make on the campaign trail and talking to people and letting people know there's another option available to them is going to be worth it. And to put it in a different sense, we have enough money as far as self-funding to run this campaign through the end with all of your typical aspects. So we'll have events similar to this. We've got yard signs here tonight. We've got handouts here tonight. We've got bumper stickers. And throughout the course of it, you'll get stuff from me in your mailbox as well. And so all of that boils down to the sense of why would you waste all of your own money when you can have people write you checks and throw you fundraisers and things like that. I'll tell you right now, every single problem in Washington and every single problem out of Oklahoma City comes down to who's writing the checks under the table and behind closed doors. Every single issue that you have in your life right now from the government is because of people, whether they're public with it or not, special interest and lobbyists writing checks so that your elected representatives will do what they want them to do and not what you elected them to do. And so if you've got one of these cards, you'll see on it in several different places here, up here, and then on this side too, it says no lobbyist money. And that's something that we've stuck to, and it's something that we're going to stick to for two reasons. One, I didn't leave one of the best careers in the country for a 25-year-old to then just go to Oklahoma City and be told what to do by people behind closed doors. I didn't do that. Second thing is, I did do this because I have an agenda and I have things that I would like to see done with our state and with our country. And you can ask anyone in the room that knows me, I don't take well to being told what to do. My older sister's right here. And she was the first one to try. But I don't take well to that. And so what I see happening is you get people, and they're almost all of our representatives at the state level start out as good, well-meaning people. But they start running these campaigns, they get low on money, or they get compromised once they're in office down at the Capitol, and they start getting these checks from unknown places and unknown groups that you and I have never heard of. And just to put it into a real-time, real scenario for you, my opponent is Senator Bill Coleman. This will be his 8th year as a senator for our district number 10. In the fourth quarter of last year, each campaign has to give quarterly financial reports. In the fourth quarter of last year, before Senator Coleman had even announced he was running for re-election, which he didn't do until 2 weeks ago, last year's fourth quarter, he raised $35,000 as someone who wasn't even running for re-election. Okay? That's broken down into individual contributors and into PACs, political action committees. From individual contributors, he raised $18,000. Would anyone care to guess how many of those dollars came from Senate District 10? Zero. $0 of Senator Bill Coleman's financial revenue from last quarter came from individuals in this district which he represents. Almost 90% of those individuals, because when you make a political donation, as some as you know, you have to list your occupation. Almost 90% of those individuals that did give to his campaign in the fourth quarter before he announced he was running were occupation lobbyists, okay? And then the other 17,000 and change were from special interest groups anyway, so they're not hiding it, they're actually giving as their group. So I just thought it was interesting that you can raise $30-some thousand before you've announced you're running, and it's even more interesting that it's coming from people who don't even live in your district. So in that same quarter, we raised $0. And the money that we did spend was all of my own. And since then, we have gotten 3 donations of $100 apiece, and almost every single one of those came from me meeting a stranger at their doorstep, going to them, talking to them, selling the campaign to them, telling them about what we're trying to accomplish here, and then being compelled in that moment to donate as soon as I left the doorstep. And that's the kind of grassroots support that we want in our campaign. I'm not saying we're not taking donations, because we appreciate all types of support, but a yard sign, a bumper sticker, sharing our post on social media will go much further to get our movement and our message out there than a donation will at this point. And so I'm not deterring anybody from donating, but I'm just telling you, money is not a problem for this campaign, and it won't be. And just so you know, you have my pledge here today. We will not be taking lobbyist money. We won't be taking special interest group money. And that's because when I get to Oklahoma City next January as your senator, I want to go there and do what I told you I was going to do. And I don't want to be pulled around or blackmailed or anything by people who don't live in our district and don't agree with what our people want. And so that's a big deal. Almost the forefront of the whole campaign is based on that principle right there. Because if you're getting money from outside influence, you're not going to be able to do what you said you were going to do when you were on the campaign trail. Luckily, like I said, we're blessed. God's blessed me with a good work ethic and good opportunities in the private sector to be able to do that. And we're going to be able to do it all the way to November, because there is a Democrat running. So we will have a Democrat opponent after we win the primary in June. But like Terry mentioned, that's not much of a threat here in the great state of Oklahoma. Second thing I'll cover is term limits. It's a hot topic, and it always has been, but as you notice, nothing ever gets done about it. We've been talking about term limits probably since before I was born, and probably long before that, both at the national level and here in the state of Oklahoma. It'll be coming out in probably a month or so. I've been delaying it because I get free press when I do it, but I will be signing on to the Congressional Term Limit Pledge. And so there's a group that's been running the country with their organization trying to get states to have a constitutional convention and amend our Constitution at the national level to cement term limits for senators and representatives at the national level. And I will be signing on to their pledge. It's a very structured constitutional convention if it ever gets to that point. So it's not everyone shows up and we get to change whatever we want in the Constitution. It has to be term limits only. They go in, they do term limits, they close the convention, that's it. So the Constitution is not at risk if that happens. It's very structured in the approach of how they do that. It's an Article 5 convention. But let's talk about term limits at the state level. So Oklahoma has term limits. And we got term limits in the legislature in the late 90s, I believe. We got term limits at the statewide offices like governor, et cetera, in 2010. However, when those term limits were put in place, your lovely legislature gave themselves 12 years to run, but limited the governor, the lieutenant governor, everybody else to only 8 years. I'm pledging to you today that if I get elected, I will vouch for the legislature to be limited down to 8 years total. So right now they can do 12, they need to be limited down to 8. If the governor of the state only gets 8 years, the president of the United States only gets 8 years, why does a senator or representative from Oklahoma need more than that? And they don't, because we have good people in every single district that can step up and serve, and more than likely it will be better people each time. And so I'll commit to you that. The other thing I'll commit to you, this is not legislative, this is dependent on myself, so it's a definite thing. If I win, I will not spend more than 8 years in the same office. So if I win as your senator, you won't have me for 12 years like Mr. Coleman wants you to have him. you'll have me for 4. And then if I run for election at that point and win again, you'll have me for 8, and that's the end of it. Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't run for county commissioner later on, or school board, or whatever. But in the same office, you won't see me for more than 8 years. It's not what the founders intended. It's not what George Washington, the man himself, set it as a precedent for the rest of the country when he did it. And I'm not going to be the one to stomp on the tracks that he left behind for us to follow. So 8 years is the max for me in whatever position I'm lucky enough to get into. And I think that's important for the viability of our democracy as we go through and continue to improve this country. So let's talk about some hot topics now. Not besides, but how do we get the country and the state into a place to where these guys, these young people here today, have a country to live in that resembles the one we all want? Because the one that we all want is not the one we're living in now. I think everyone would agree with that. It's far from it. It's torn, it's tattered. We're getting trampled on by just about every group that can, including some of our own neighbors. That's not limited to the Democrats either. There are plenty within the Republican Party at large that have policies, ideas, and workings behind the scenes that are not good for our country. And I think we see that almost every day with the opposition within the Republican Party itself amongst common sense ideals like voter ID. In case you forgot, the Senate and the House at the national level are majority Republican. But somehow we're 14 months into President Trump's second term and we don't have voter ID, we don't have no mail-in ballots except for military and permanently disabled people, and we don't have secure elections. But we have Republican majorities in all 3 branches of government. It's because we continue to elect Republicans who are not real conservatives. And if you have this card in front of you, if you don't, I can get you one before you leave. You'll see a very small section about the incumbent senator that you have right now and some of his votes. And let me stop before we get into that. I'm not running a campaign anti-Bill Coleman. I'm running a campaign pro-Jayden Terrazas. However, I will tell you the facts, just like I did with the financial report just a minute ago. I will tell you the facts because it's important for you to know what the person who's been representing you for the past 7, almost 8 years has done in that amount of time. So if you'll see right there in that section, you'll see that, shut up, Banks. You'll see that your senator, your Republican senator in the great red state of Oklahoma voted to give illegal immigrants driver's licenses. And the first time that happened, it came up and it didn't pass. Well, guess what? It came up again and you'd have thought, oh, well, maybe he came to his senses and that's not a good idea. No, he voted for it twice. So your Republican senator voted to give illegal immigrants driver's licenses, okay? Besides that, he voted to block the Department of Education from being able to see the impact that illegal immigrant students have on our school systems, particularly in the metro, like Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Norman, a little bit in Stillwater, where there are very large populations there. And it's good. We want children to be in school. However, when we talk about Oklahoma being 50th in education, in those large city, heavy populated areas, we don't talk about the impact those children have on the resources allocated because we don't account for them all the time. They're not registered citizens of the country. It's hard to account for the strain they have on the school systems when they're not documented. Other thing he did, this was a study, so if you all don't know, our representatives down in Oklahoma City, if they have a type of legislation they're wanting to pursue, but they're not totally sure how it's going to go once it's enacted into law, they publish or fund a study on that legislation. And that typically means they throw a few $1 million at different groups and think tanks to go and study what might happen if this might happen. Well, one study that Senator Coleman wanted to look into and spent millions studying was the conversion of every Oklahoma road into a toll road. I don't know about you, but I think we already pay taxes to build roads and bridges and everything else. And I'm not so sure that we want to pay another fee or tax every time we drive down every single state highway that we take on a daily basis. And that's just a few things. Other than that, since this is an Oklahoma Second Amendment Association meeting, I'll tell you, you won't find a bigger friend and proponent of the Second Amendment in this room besides maybe Terry. And he's open carrying, so I won't say anything bad about him right But one thing that I do have that's a legislative priority for me and a little bit of an idea, you see in other states, and Oklahoma is trying to do it this year, where they have a sales tax holiday on guns and ammunition. So a lot of states do it on the 4th of July. They say, oh, we're going to be really patriotic on this one weekend. And this one weekend, you can use your Second Amendment right for no taxes at all. You just have to spend your money on it, but we're not going to tax you for practicing your Second Amendment right and purchasing a firearm or ammunition. If I get elected, I will pursue legislation. I did this just for the OK2A meeting. I haven't told anybody this. I will pursue legislation to make guns and ammunition tax-free 24/7, 365 days a year.
All right.
I don't think, I can't think of a single other part of the Constitution where you have to pay a tax to purchase or to practice that specific right in the Bill of Rights. There's not one. You don't have to pay taxes to speak. You don't have to pay taxes to go to church. You do have to pay taxes for whatever reason to keep and bear arms. And that's not how the founders would have intended it. I can imagine that if they knew that was going to be a thing eventually, they would have practiced their Second Amendment tax-free in a very different way. So that's something I want to do, especially for OK2A meeting tonight, to announce that. A little bit more on the immigration, and then we'll take to the Q&A piece. A lot of people don't realize this, but right now in the United States of America, there's roughly 330 million people, okay? And people is the correct term right there. There are not 330 Americans. Now let's dissect that a little bit. 330 million is a lot of people. Out of that 330, about 50 million are quote-unquote legal immigrants. So work visas, H-1B, university visas, etc. Refugee status, political asylum, and things like that. 50 million, give or take. And those are documented. We have them because we do the paperwork and they're here. Whether right, wrong, or indifferent, they're here legally. There's another, and this is the number that gets blurry. Either way, it's an astronomically large and unnecessary number. There's another 40 to 60 million illegal immigrants in the United States of America. So now let's take it back a little bit. There's 50 million here that we know because they're legal. There's another 40 to 60 million here that we think are here because we know they came across or got in, but we don't know where they went, where they came from, or who they are. So now let's go back to the 330. Out of your 330, 100 to 110 million of them are not United States citizens. And what does that mean? That means that almost 1 in 3 people in the United States of America does not have allegiance to the United States of America. Many of them, especially the ones who have been here for decades as an immigrant, do not want to have allegiance to the United States of America. And when you hear about deportations or how do we have a pathway to citizenship, etc., when you think about 40 to 60 million, don't know who they are, don't know where they came from, don't know why they're here, you have to stop and think, does any serious, viable country allow those people to stay and become part of the United States of America? And the answer is no. You cannot let almost a quarter of your population become naturalized, or whatever you want to call it, into your social fabric as a country. And how do we know this doesn't work? Think back to early last year when Border Patrol and Immigration went to the city of Los Angeles and tried to remove the worst of the worst. They were going after rapists, they were going after murderers, they were going after serial offenders, people who have been deported half a dozen times, but each time they come back and commit another crime. That's why they were there. When that happened, you saw riots in the street of an American city. And what flag did you see held by those rioters? It wasn't the American flag. And when it was the American flag, it was upside down or on fire. That's what happens when you let unvetted, criminal, illegal aliens into your country. And you think, oh, well, that's in California, we don't have to worry about it. It will come to us. And if you haven't seen, there's been school after school after school in the state of Oklahoma over the past 2 weeks where their children have been indoctrinated so far to the point that they're walking out of the classroom holding foreign flags and protesting in the middle of the school day. I don't know about you, But when I was under the age of 18, I did not get to practice all of my constitutional rights at school. Didn't have a gun. If I had something in my backpack that wasn't allowed, they didn't have to get a warrant to go and search it. I wasn't allowed to say whatever I wanted when I wanted. There are still rules if you're a child in the United States of America. And one of those is you don't get to walk out of school to go and protest. Constitutional, right there. And if it's not, then why don't we have carrying guns to the school? Because even as an adult, you can't do that. Why do we have unwarranted searches from school children's bags, whether there's probable cause or not? The argument for allowing children to leave their school in the middle of the day is not only a bad one, it's an unsafe precedent to set to where we can just let our children run rampant when they're technically under the direct supervision of the state. Would you want your kid to run out of school for any other reason, never come back for that day? No. You'd be calling the principal and the superintendent saying, where the heck is my kid and why'd you let him get out of school? So why are we letting it happen for some leftist talking point that they don't all believe? They're just out there because they're getting out of school for it. It's utterly ridiculous, and we shouldn't allow it to happen in the state of Oklahoma. But as you've seen and as I've told you, we have people running our systems who say they're Republicans, but everything they do and say and write is otherwise. And that's the foremost of that is the mayor of Oklahoma City, who says he's Republican, but is the most Democrat person in the state of Oklahoma, which is why he's trying to get open elections, open primaries from California to Oklahoma so that he can switch to a Democrat, run for governor, and win as a Democrat, which is exactly why he's doing this, in case anyone was wondering. His name is David Holt, so he's a crook. He probably got reelected right now. He's got 22 minutes left for the polls to close, and he's probably going to win because Oklahoma City would rather have giant basketball arenas than real conservative leaders elected. So power to him for now. But that's just a little bit of the impact you can have from different issues related to illegal immigration. I come from, half of my family were legal documented immigrants, and they came here, we adopted the American dream fully, and we act like Americans. And you can come here legally, but if you do come here legally because you love the United States of America, then you need to act like it. And if you don't act like it, you need to be denaturalized and deported. This is sure, it's a melting pot, but the only reason the melting pot works is because it's predominantly Americans in it. And the ones that come and join it turn into Americans once they're here. But instead, they try to bring their cultures, their religions, their policies, their dress codes, their hygiene habits to our country, and it doesn't work. We cannot have a country without borders and without serious immigration enforcement and policies. And you can say what you want about President Trump. When he's done, if he's successful in doing what he said he was going to do and what got him elected all 3 times, and yes, I said 3, then he will be the most effective immigration law president we've ever had and probably will ever have. You remember the border wall? Kind of loses your memory these days because it's been so well, everyone quit talking about it. We just signed a contract today to get more steel for it because we're not done building. And it's going to be American steel. If you didn't see this stat, part of the effect of Trump economics on the country, for the first time since 1999, which by the way, I was barely born, we are now the premier producer of steel in the United States as far as what steel we're using. We are now using more American steel in America than at any time since 1999. We knocked Japan off of the map. They were #1 up until that point. And people can say tariffs are bad, tariffs this, tariffs that. Part of my degree program at Oklahoma State was heavy into economics. And when tariffs are used the way President Trump is using them, they are probably the most effective use of tariffs that has been done in the history of the world. And people say, oh, that's bad. But if it's so bad, then why was every single other country in the world using them against us the same exact way we're now using them against them? And it's because they work and they're effective negotiating measures to get fair trade. Every Republican Bush era and back was all about free and fair trade. But they all said that out of one corner of their mouth and then signed trade deals with every other country in the world that ripped off the American citizen, which is why we don't have steel mills in the country anymore, we don't have textiles in the country anymore, we don't have progress, or we don't have processing and manufacturing in the country anymore, because we literally gave it to the rest of the world and then let them charge us to bring it back in. That's over, and I'll tell you, if we don't engage and adopt and fully endorse this new wave of conservatism that President Trump largely has introduced to our country, which is really not all that new. It's just actually doing what the Republicans said all along they were going to do. If we don't endorse that and adopt it and go out and hold the flag for it, we won't have a country in the next 10 to 15 years. Because of those 1 in 3 people in the country that aren't citizens, they typically have 2 to 4 more children than Americans do. So not only are they here, they're populating and repopulating. And eventually, because states like California, New York, Colorado, and New Mexico have weak laws for their elections, not only are they here, they're voting where they live, and eventually those states will overtake the congressional majority to where it doesn't matter the candidate, the election, the national issue. The Democrat states fueled by illegal immigration will hold the majorities in both houses of Congress, and there will be nothing left for us to do to fight it outside of actual fighting. And we don't want to get to that point. We are very close right now to not being able to reverse it, but I think we can. And I think it's going to take electing people at every single level, from the school board, city commission, dog catcher, whatever, up to President of the United States, of real Republicans and real conservatives to get these things done. No matter what the media says, no matter what the teachers' unions say, no matter what the loud minority wants to throw back at us in the press and on TV and online, we can't listen to those people. They've been yapping like a small dog since 2015 when President Trump came down the escalator. And every step of the way, they blocked every single piece of common sense rhetoric, enforcement, and legislation that Republicans have proposed. And on the instances where we keep our head down, don't listen to them, and actually do what we said we were going to do, we're successful, and the polls support us once it's done. But in the interim, when we're just starting to get progress on something, for example, like deportations in Minnesota, just when we're making progress, the news shows up, the paid protesters show up, and they automatically have the national news against us, and Republicans get weak and back down. And all that does is lose our support from both people that we had on our side to begin with, like me, who would support that to continue because it's effective. We lose support of those people, and we lose even more support from people in the middle because we didn't do what we said we were going to do. And if, and right now it's looking like when, Republicans lose the midterms in November this year, it will not be because of President Trump. It will be because Republicans in the Senate and the House have wasted 14 months of a full Republican government and got nothing done. That is why we will right now lose the midterms. So what we need to make sure of is that no matter the influence at the national level, Oklahoma is not only worth saving, it is very, very feasible to circle the wagons around Oklahoma and take it back to the strong conservative state that it has been in the past and certainly will be in the future if we can all band together and elect strong conservative leaders at a state level in the Senate and the House for all of our statewide races. And with that, I'll open to questions. Thank you all for showing up tonight.
Yeah, hey. Well
I have a quick comment.
Yeah.
On the illegal driver's licenses or driver's license for illegals. Bill Coleman proudly authored the bill the first time because I was in a seminar where he announced he was authoring it and was very proud.
Well, not just that, but Bill Coleman brought Senator Brooks, who sponsored it, up to Kay County to an OK2A meeting to try to sell it.
Well, actually, I invited
Well-
Coleman to talk to me.
But you know what I'm saying.
One thing, I like having the other side at my meetings because their ideas suck and ours are good. And I'd like to confront it, but yeah.
It was a good meeting because they got a lot of holes poked in their plan.
Yeah, and if I remember right, they tried to say the reason they were supporting it is because X amount of sheriffs or law enforcement said that it would help them do X, Y, or Z. I'll tell you right now, that's not conservative leaders talking. That's special interest lobbyist groups behind the scenes that have paid them for their campaigns and are now forcing them to support that stupid legislation that frankly is treasonous to the United States of America. Question?
There's a big push on, and it's been going for a couple of years now, and I don't know if it's part of the petition system or not, ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
State question 836.
Oh, so it is on there. It is
Well-
ranked choice, or was that the jungle primary?
Yeah,
They're two different
that's
things.
it. No, they're the same thing.
No,
State
no,
question
This is
836.
jungle. So state question 836 is jungle primary.
Yeah, we're all, everyone,
Right.
yeah, it's together.
Ranked choice doesn't really have any traction in the state right now.
Well,
Oh, right.
However,
2 years ago or 3 years ago, it was being pushed by the Oklahoma Municipal League.
right. And so you have groups like that to where you would think by their name, oh, we should support them. They're a good group. Anyone who has created a group and then pays themselves massive salaries to go and do the work of the people as part of that group, you probably should think twice about whether they're in it for the right reasons. To talk about ranked choice a little bit, I think they gave up on that one
Did they?
and pursued jungle primaries instead. For anyone who doesn't know, a jungle primary is where you don't have to be part of a party to enter the primary election, if you want to call it a primary election. So if this passes, it's state question 836, if it passes, you could have a scenario where 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat are on the ballot at the same time. Like, so my primary is in June. Let's say in June there's 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat, but you, as a registered Republican, could vote for any of them. What happens is because there's 4 Republicans, the Republican voters spread out amongst those 4 candidates. Because there's only 1 Democrat, all the Democrats flock to the 1 Democrat. And then the top 2 vote count. No one has to get a majority, no one has to get a plurality. The top 2 with the highest 2 vote counts are then the ones that go to the general election. So for example, in 2022, when Oklahoma was electing Governor Stitt for a 2nd term, had we had jungle primaries in 2022, the general election would have been 2 Democrats on the ballot. So that is the petition that you've probably seen a little bit about, State Question 836. The mayor of Oklahoma City, who claims to be a Republican, has been the #1 spokesperson in the state for that. And like I mentioned during my speech, I truly believe it's because he wants it to pass so that he can use Oklahoma City and Tulsa to push him to the governor's spot and win as a Democrat. And right now, they had to get 176,000 signatures, I believe. They claimed they got 200,000, and they turned them in to the election office a couple weeks ago. So now they'll spend the next several weeks going in and auditing each signature. Right now, we won't know for several weeks or maybe in a couple months as to whether they got enough verifiable signatures. I've heard some leaks from that arena saying that they don't think they've got it. You can pray about that and hope that they don't, because if they do, it will be a huge fight going into November of trying to defeat that petition. And right now, this year we're electing new governor, new lieutenant governor, half the Senate, and all of the House of Representatives. I would much rather be able to devote our time, resources, and money towards getting conservatives elected across the state than having to fight off a California-style election system and keep it out of Oklahoma. So hopefully their signatures have been voided enough to where they don't have what they need. But right now it's being audited, and we'll see how that goes or not. Question?
Yes. Are you familiar with the concept of a state guard?
I know where you're going. Yeah,
Okay,
keep going.
So you talked about, in the event that things go awry, to the extent that they may at the federal level, that we need to be able to circle the wagons around Oklahoma. I believe that it was Nathan Dahm who initially sponsored the state level bill to establish the state guard somewhere around a decade ago. Obviously did not pass. Florida, Texas, Virginia, lots of states, good and not good, have state guards. The strength of this is that it would not be able to be federalized by the president. We're seeing that power re-invoked a lot in our favor at the moment. But if we get a bad federal government, which is entirely a real prospect, we will not even have the capacity to back our own words and positions if the National Guard, which is supposed to be answerable to the state government, can just be federalized and turned against the governor at a whim, as was done in the 1960s. What's your position on that? Would you support the establishment of a state guard, and would you be willing to possibly even sponsor a bill for the purpose?
Yeah, it's a tricky question because last time I checked the Constitution, we already had the right for a regulated militia, right? What has happened is over decades and decades of loose judicial enforcement across the country, they've bastardized it to the point to where now the National Guard at each state level can be then taken by the federal government at any point they deem necessary. Two things on this. Number one, I support the state being able to have a well-regulated militia. The way I read the Constitution, that's how it reads already. What I don't know is how we would get past the court system, which, as you know, is chock full of activist judges, to, even if we did pass that law, how do we get it to where it's actually not going to get defeated in court? One thing for sure that could help with that is for the Senate Majority Leader, who is John Thune at DC, to let Trump do recess appointments and actually get some judges that are conservatives in the 60-some open spots that have been open since Trump took office last year. Whereas every other president for the past 20 years has been able to do recess appointments to where they can just put these people into positions because they are the president after all. But John Thune, who is so-called Republican, refuses to recess the Senate and let Trump make recess appointments, even though every other president, including both the last Democrat presidents, have been able to do that, even when a Republican was in control of the Senate. Second part of this is part of the issue with the way the National Guard system is going right now, and this is where I thought you were going to go with your question, is did you all know that the National Guard, whether it's Oklahoma, Florida, whatever, can be deployed to a foreign war zone even though a federal declaration of war has not been voted on?
Correct.
That is not how the Constitution works. So if we haven't declared war, how does the federal government have the ability to take our National Guard and deploy them to a foreign land? If you remember, it's probably been 2 or 4 months ago now, we had 2 gentlemen of the Iowa National Guard get killed in Syria. And most people at that time said, what? We had people in Syria? Not only did we have troops in Syria, they were National Guard. They weren't active duty military. They were National Guard from the state of Iowa who were overdoing neocon projects in the state of Syria and got killed while on their tour of duty, which is unconstitutional in the first place. They should have never been there. So I'm 100% aligned with the thought that if there's not been a declaration of war, then the federal government has no authority to deploy our National Guard troops to a foreign land. Go ahead.
What do you think about the Department of Education as to how Walter's changed it and what they're doing now?
Yeah, it's a good question. And in a lot of groups, that's a very hot topic across the state of Oklahoma. So one thing about Ryan Walters is he started out very hot as an outsider, and anytime somebody gets both sides pissed off at them, I tend to like that person. Because the system is so rigged and so petrified with career politicians and bureaucrats that when we can find somebody who nobody within the system likes, I support them typically out of instinct. So I'll say, when he was running the first time, I supported a lot of what he was saying. However, as most of you saw, and as most of you probably remember, because it's more recent memory, he spent like the last 18 months of his tenure worrying more about Fox News appearances and more about getting elected or selected for Trump's cabinet or Trump's administration than he did about the state of Oklahoma's education. And so he, in my opinion with him, he came out hot. He could have been somebody that really made an impact and did well for the children of Oklahoma. But I think because of political ambitions, he kind of lost his footing along the way and turned out to be kind of a dud, in my opinion. I supported him, and then he was more focused on not Oklahoma, and he lost me. So what I'll tell you, though, is the state of Oklahoma is one of like 12 or 16 states that allows the superintendent of public instruction to be elected by the state at large. You'll see a debate and probably hear it more and more over the next several years about, do we want the superintendent of public instruction to be appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate? A lot of people go back and forth on that, to where if something's already a vote of the people, reversing that in any way sets a bad precedent. I agree with that, but I also know and agree with the fact that to have effective government, it does have to work. And the governor appoints a lot of other positions that are more concentrated. And so I don't know that it would be the end of the world if the superintendent was appointed But I'm also, like I said, very much in favor of any time the people have control of something, let them keep it. Because I think we get it taken from us far too often. Yeah.
I don't want to hog the floor, but since you talked so much about illegal immigration, one of the big subjects of discussion recently has been, in Oklahoma specifically, the green lighting, I think, of some construction of mosques and things over in the Tulsa area. There's also a significant Islamic presence in North Texas. What is your position on whether the First Amendment even applies to Islam? Because I can tell you right now, you go reread the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, the prohibition of the Mohammedan religion, as they call it, was an example that was specifically used by people during the debate on the ratification of the Constitution as something so outlandish and ridiculous as to have no need to be prohibited within the Constitution, though of course it ought to be if there were a fear that it might gain a significant presence here. It's very explicitly stated as an outlandish, like when pigs fly scenario. So, the First Amendment, in my view, was never intended to defend non-Christian religion. It is intended to permit free exercise of the Christian religion within a variety of denominational contexts across the individual states. Would you be willing to back legislation which would specifically target and endeavor to prevent the further establishment of Islamic presence in the state of Oklahoma, even if you know that the courts will not uphold your legislation because these test cases must be made?
Yeah, no, and I agree on the theory and practice of test cases to that point while we're there. What I'll tell you is I was publicly opposed to the approval of that mosque construction in Broken Arrow. If you look in North Texas, as you mentioned, there's, I can't remember the name of it, but essentially the Muslims have moved in and created their own city within that part of Texas. What's it called?
Epic. I think it's the East of Plano Islamic Community.
Yeah. At the time of the adoption of the Constitution, back in 1783 or 4, I can't remember which, maybe I'm off there.
1787.
At the time of that, almost a supermajority of the states in this country had state churches still. Every single one of those state churches were Christian churches. When the United States was first founded, it was founded largely because of Christians fleeing persecution in Europe from the state religions and the more orthodox veins of the religion over there. So if you would have told these guys who wrote the Constitution and the ones who enacted the Constitution that they would, 250 years later, be battling a so-called religion whose entire purpose is to murder and kill and take advantage of Christians, I would say they would be totally against it. And I think you can see that, as you mentioned in the Federalist Papers, as some of the biggest examples of how they intended the Constitution to be enacted. For those of you that don't know, the Federalist Papers were a series after series of newspaper articles and other messaging platforms back in the 1780s to get the country at large to adopt the Constitution. So the Constitution was not adopted yet. The Federalist Papers were John Jay, James Madison, and who am I missing?
Hamilton.
And Alexander Hamilton, who wrote essay after essay, 80-something of them, if I remember right, and then James Madison wrote the supermajority of them, to get the states, each state by state, to ratify the Constitution the way that they had written it in the Constitutional Convention. And so those papers, the Federalist Papers, should be the North Star, the guiding light of how even we still today interpret and then apply the Constitution of the United States. And so to your point, yes, I would support that. And it's not just to the point of this one religion, it's to the point of, does this group, does their ideology, their practice, their everyday in and out lifestyle adhere with the United States of America, which is a sovereign country with sovereign people, or does it not? And so it doesn't limit to Islam, it doesn't limit to Christianity, it doesn't limit to Hinduism. It's, do these people mesh with the moral, social, and cultural fabric of our country? It is ours, after all. Or do they not? And by and large, those radical Islamic terrorists, and not all of them are terrorists. I have a very, very close Muslim friend. He knows my stance on this through and through. We're still friends. And he's still a Republican. But he knows that if they were to ever try and build one of those types of settlements in the state of Oklahoma whether it's in my yard or whether it's all the way down in Atoka, I would not support it because it's not part of who we are as a country, the United States of America. You want to practice your religion? Fine. But you're not going to shove it down our throat, and you're not going to change the moral, social, and cultural fabric of our country with 250 years of precedent and building to get us here by doing that now.
I say amen.
Let me jump in here. I've got the perfect answer to how to deal with the First Amendment and Islam. Islam is not a religion. It's a repressive political system that uses the concept of religion, and they're using our own Constitution against us. So the way to solve this is to pull their religious title off of it, in my opinion, and since I'm right about everything, that will fix it all. Thank you. Sorry to jump in.
This is Terry's meeting after all.
So I lived in North Texas the last 15 years, and it's actually probably the immigrant community that's the most concerned about the Muslims in North Texas.
Yep.
The people that are like naturalized, not naturally, yeah, naturalized citizens, yeah. People that weren't born here, because they've seen it in their countries.
Yeah.
They're very vocal about it. Like,
I'll just tell you,
just on the street, they're very vocal about it.
and this has been the case for decades.
Especially for
The immigrants that come here, whether they were illegal when they got here or whether they were legal the whole way through, the ones that come here and truly love the United States of America, they are better citizens than some of the people that were born here.
Amen.
They're the most staunch conservatives because their countries are more theocracy and have religion running the whole thing. And so our immigrant communities across the country, the ones that came here for the right reasons and want to be here, I would take them sometimes over normal Republicans that were born here. And that's just because they're more passionate about it, because they've seen what can happen when the Republican ideals and principles are not in control of the government. And they flee from that. And so there's a group, particularly the Afrikaners in South Africa right now. So a lot of you don't know this, but the government of South Africa right now and for years have been killing the white people that are in South Africa and taking their land. That sounds like some fairy tale from the American Civil War. It's not. It's happening right now in South Africa, one of the developed countries of the world. And so when we've taken refugees, almost the only refugees that President Trump has let in the second term were white Afrikaners from South Africa to save them from being killed by the South Africans who are literally killing them and taking their land. They have videos where their houses, you know, like when you go to a bad part of town and people have the metal screen door over their normal door, these people have like vaults over their front door, their windows, and there's videos from the inside of those houses that are reminiscent of the October 7th attacks in Israel, where Hamas was beating on the bomb shelters trying to get in and kill them. And that was happening to white people in South Africa. So I'm not full-blood white. It's not about race, it's about ideals and principles and moral fabric. And the types of immigrants that we do take in, we need to vet them and make sure that they're here because they love America and are going to contribute, not because they're going to treat our country like a strip mine, which the rest of the world has for the last 40 or 50 years. And largely, that is in part to American Republicans and their policies they set via trade and immigration. Reagan's entire reputation would have been perfect 100% without the amnesty. But many people don't know this. Reagan and his amnesty is almost all of the reason we have part of our problems today with immigration in the United States of America.
The government of South Africa is also celebrating the murder of these white people.
Yeah.
They're not even trying to sweep it under the rug. They're celebrating. It's horrendous.
They're driving them out of a land that the only reason South Africa and much of Africa has any development at all is because of Europeans.
Yep.
And so now that they're there and they have the spoils of that, they're turning it against the ones who are still there. And if you see that and you think, oh, well, America is the most developed country in the world, it is. But we're importing the third world. And when the third world becomes the majority in this country, it's not a far cry to think that that type of scene could one day happen here if we don't get a hold of it quickly. And I don't mean to turn everything into some kind of bloody, gory, this or that is going to happen. But it's true. And you don't have to be a projectionist to wonder that. It's happening in the world right now. You look at Europe. They have let unfettered immigration, similar to us. The only difference is their countries are so much smaller than ours that it has run its course already. And there are cities in Europe right now where you're safer in the south side of Chicago than you are in that entire country because of the amount of immigrants they've let in from the worst parts of the world. And here's the difference. Those people didn't cross a border fence to get into that country. That country's government brought them in. And that's why I think in the next several years you're going to see the collapse, or at least the total rejuvenation of the European Union, because all it's done is essentially created economic and a demographical suicide of the entire European continent. And so luckily we're in Oklahoma, don't have to worry much about that. But it's a good example to look what's possible if we don't get a hold of ourselves. So how are we on time?
We're
Need to wrap
fine.
up?
Yeah, we're doing fine.
Any other questions?
The former House leadership had concerns about their members riding on other people's private planes and jets and influencer decisions. Do you have any thoughts on that personally for you?
I don't know any of the background to that. I would just say that if it's public knowledge, then their voters need to make decisions as to whether that's something they want their representative doing or not.
Is that something you're okay to do, or?
To ride on a jet somewhere?
Yeah, like other lobbyist planes, or like what?
Oh, well, you already know my feelings about lobbyists, so you wouldn't catch me on one of those. Yeah, wouldn't catch me on one of those. Do you have a question in the very back? Go ahead.
With our educational system seeming to be very liberal, how do we regain conservative input and control of our educational system? I mean, it seems like so much has just toppled over to this liberal philosophy. This is not an exact illustration, but it's kind of one that I've thought about. You know, we go back 20 years ago, the use of the reflexive pronoun was very strictly limited for reflexive purposes. Now the whole country has capitulated to using that as a substitute for me and my and I. We just say myself or himself or herself to use, which to me is an example of the fact that they're just too lazy to figure out which one to use. But back to my point, when that started in our country about 20 years ago, basically the whole educational system refused to deal with it. Just let it happen. They didn't teach, they didn't combat it, they didn't talk, this is really what's correct grammar or anything. It just happened.
Yeah.
And they didn't do anything about it. Teachers just, okay.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. If you followed me at all the way back to 2018, I am no friend of the teachers' unions. I've been very vocal against them. I think in large part, they have every single interest against children as part of what they support, the candidates they fund, and the policies that they try to enact.
Amen.
The Oklahoma Education Association, the OEA, is the state branch of the NEA, the National Education Association. The NEA has supported every single Democrat presidential candidate since Obama's first term. The NEA was one of the premier groups. That's my nephew. The NEA was one of the premier groups in favor of maintaining Roe v. Wade. So, puzzle me this: how does a group whose entire existence, viability, and purpose exist for the betterment of children, how does that same group then support the murder of millions and millions of children in the womb? That's all you need to know about teachers' unions and the premier teachers' unions at the state of Oklahoma level and the national level, is they do not have the interests of the teacher or of the children in mind. And in that vein, many of them don't have the interests of the teachers in mind either. To fix the state of Oklahoma's education system, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are 49 other states that supposedly do it better than we do. I don't buy that ranking, just so you know. We've got a couple of teachers in the room here that I know personally. We don't have the dumbest kids in the country. We do not. What we do have is some of the worst drug use rates in the country. We have some of the worst domestic violence rates in the country. We have some of the most loose marijuana laws in the country. and we have one of the highest divorce rates in the United States. As the Bible Belt, we have some of the highest divorce rates in the United States. All of you know that a broken home, an alcoholic home, a drugged out home, a home with violence, a home without biblical teaching and man and woman as mom and dad is not going to be a home conducive to that student then going to school and learning. Because guess what? When that student goes to school, they're not worried about learning, they're worried about eating and not having to dodge punches or drug needles or alcoholic bottles in their own bedroom. That's why they're at school, to seek refuge. When you clean Oklahoma of all of the, we call them sin taxes, but we say every time a new Democrat liberal drug policy or social moral fabric like no-cause divorce, etc., every time one of those things comes across the desk in Oklahoma City, they don't try to stop it, they just try to tax it. Well, it's very obvious that just taxing it's not curbing it at all. And it's also quite obvious that the tax money we're getting from it is not being used to make anything better. Because education has increased by multi-billion dollars in their budget over the past 10 years, and our scores didn't get any better. So the problem is not money. The problem is not the teachers, by and large. Now, there are some people that are crazy, radical liberals, and they pose as a very nice, soft-spoken teacher that's going to have the best interest of your child in mind. There is nobody who hates those types of teachers more than other teachers, because they watch them sit at their desk, pass out a worksheet, and then for the next 50 minutes, they don't talk, they don't do anything with the kids, they just wait for them to go to the next class. This is in the high school, middle school setting where they rotate in and out. And the university system, which I have gone to war with several times at Oklahoma State, which is supposedly the conservative state school in Oklahoma. I'm telling you right now, it's not. Oklahoma State, similar to the state of Oklahoma at large, looks bright and red and conservative on the outside, but once you dig into it, the bureaucrats, the professors, the people making the decisions about the money are liberal, and they don't hide it. You had a young man right after Charlie Kirk got shot, who he wore his Charlie Kirk hat to the Student Government Association meeting at OSU, and the faculty sponsor of the Student Government Association told him, you know, if you wear that hat, you're going to have problems here. And she's a raging liberal. As soon as I found out who it was, I was like, oh yeah, I know her. She was that way when I was there 6 years ago. And she got put on leave, and they investigated it, and guess what? She's right back to work. So to answer your overarching question, there's things we can do in the education system. One of those is, and you hear this all the time, is reading. So at third grade is when the minds across the country have said, okay, if you can't read by third grade, that's one of the #1 leading factors that proves to us you're not going to be successful past third grade. Mississippi is always the example. They call it Mississippi Miracle, whatever. And what Mississippi did back in 2012, 2014 is they passed a law that said if you don't read at level by the end of third grade, you repeat third grade. Sounds pretty common sense, doesn't it? However, at the same time, Oklahoma passed that same exact law. For 2 years, Oklahoma had that law, from 2012 to 2014, or from 2014 to 16, something like that. And for those 2 years, our reading scores got better. Well, guess what the State Department of Ed did after the second year? They decided the money that was funding the programs that were driving those scores in the right direction didn't need the money anymore. Oklahoma quit funding it and repealed the law 2 years later. Well, since 2014, Oklahoma has gone from in the 30s of education to 50th. Mississippi has gone from 50th to 17th. So it's not hard. Mississippi has many of the same social and family problems that Oklahoma has as far as broken homes, alcoholic, drug abuse, etc. But they've at least thrown up a very strong barrier in the school system that says you either read by third grade or you're going to third grade again. And for majority of students, that would solve a lot of our problems. That's one policy we can enact to drive the scores up. But like I said, that one policy will not solve every other problem I just spelled out to you all, because every single other problem that I spelled out to you, that may, if we do the reading gate, which is what's called third grade reading gate, if we enact that, that's great. Our reading scores will go up. That doesn't prevent the kids from getting beat when they go home. It doesn't prevent their parents from being drug addicts. It doesn't prevent them from being exposed to drugs and then drug addicts themselves before they're even out of middle school. And it doesn't prevent any of the opportunities to partake in all that stuff once they're adults from going away. You will still have a casino in every corner. You will still have your dispensary next door to yourself. And you will still have people who get divorced just because they feel like it that day. And none of that is right, and none of that is going to drive Oklahoma, especially education, in the right direction, because we're raising children in third world environments in the United States of America. And it's not unique to Oklahoma. Oklahoma just hasn't put their foot down in the education system to say, this is the one place we do have control of this child for 8 hours a day. We're going to make sure that 8 hours is not only safe for them, but good for their learning experience. And we haven't done it because, again, we have people, including my opponent, who has said this for term after term after term, that we're going to fix education, we're going to fix education, and we have only gotten worse. And it's because they're afraid to go against the teachers' unions. And guess who's against the third grade reading gate?
Teachers union.
The teachers
They were
unions.
instrumental in killing that.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're against it. I'll tell you this, I'm not going to hide anything from you through this whole campaign. In general, I can't stand unions. And that's probably going to lose me some votes, not in this room necessarily, but across the board. I can't stand them, okay? I understand the need for them in certain instances, but especially working at Amazon, when I interact or at least get educated and have to kind of wait around the different unions, it is always just like a politician. They're promising and offering one thing, but then when it actually happens, the only people that suffer are their members. And that's not the case for every union. I'm sure there are some really fine ones out there. But when it comes to state-run education, there's no room for unions in that sector. We're literally funding that organization and then letting another organization come in and influence it at a very disproportionate amount. And that's not right. The taxpayers of Oklahoma didn't vote for that teachers union. They voted for our governor, our representatives, our superintendent of public instruction, but then that teacher union has disproportionate influence of how education goes in our state. And that shouldn't be allowed.
We've got time for one more
One more?
question.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you could flesh out the length of your platform that says essentially that you would support enacting massive property tax reform. Could you just give us a little bit more information as to what you mean by that?
Yeah, two things there. One on property tax, one on income tax. And one of them is going to be an open thread. I think, and bear with me here, the current state question that seeks to completely get rid of the property tax, I'm not going to support it. And I'll tell you why. Because it, just like I have a huge problem with the state question system in the state of Oklahoma, you can attribute a lot of our state's problems right now to the ability to take a rampant petition from any group, anybody, and turn it into state law because voters don't get the right information about it before they vote. That's a voter problem too, it's not just a state question problem. But without that, you wouldn't have recreational marijuana in Oklahoma, and that's what we have. You know, no one's getting fooled, it's recreational. But back to the property tax thing that's coming up this year, and I'm sure it'll get enough signatures if it hasn't already. It seeks to just totally strip it. The problem is, it doesn't have any type of infrastructure to replace the funding that it takes away. And that doesn't mean that you raise taxes, but it doesn't even say that we're going to take money from something else and apply it to here. Something about property tax that a lot of people don't realize is every single cent of property tax stops at the county line. Your property tax in Kay County does not go to Oklahoma City. It stops in Kay County. And so, for instance, you have all of these taxpayers in Kay County who pay their property tax each year, and then that goes out to the structure within Kay County. Most of it is county upkeep, so your water districts, your roads, everything like that. And then the rest of it is education. And that split is, if I remember right, it's like 70-30. 70% to education, 30% to the county functional. 80-20? Okay, you might be right on that. So about 80% of your property tax goes to fund your local schools. Not Oklahoma City, not Tulsa, local county schools. So the question that voters have to come to bearing with is, if we do want our property taxes to go away, how are we going to fund the services that they currently support? And does that include raising a tax somewhere else? I'll tell you my bent on that, is I don't think it includes raising a tax anywhere else. I think it means we go to Oklahoma City and take a look at the list of agencies that's this long and say, maybe we don't need 200 some agencies in the state of Oklahoma who only has governance over 4 million people. So, number one, I think property tax is unconstitutional in a sense. I think it's anti-democratic. I think it's not in alignment with Americans' founding ideals of life, liberty, and property. Because essentially what paying property tax means, it means that you don't own the land, you lease it from the government for an annual fee. That's what property tax is. Just to put it out there. And that means that we should get rid of it. That doesn't mean we should go about it recklessly and leave one branch of the government or one system in the government that's very beneficial to the population at large high and dry with no money. And so I'm all for getting rid of the property tax. I'm all for getting rid of the income tax. And I think we can do that before we tackle property tax, to be honest with you. Because guess what? Oklahomans that get to keep their own money, they're not going to spend it somewhere else. They're going to spend it in Oklahoma. And so if we do have to have some kind of tax, and I think up here, most of us would say, yes, we do. And right here, we would say, no, we don't need any taxes. And I would agree with both those places. We have to have some type of revenue to fund the basic services of government. And over the years, we've all agreed that roads, education, and a few other very important things are worthy of those dollars, whether we have children in the schools, whether we drive on the roads or not. So I think it's much easier to get rid of income tax first and then tackle property tax. There's probably a way to go after both at the same time where we don't end up with anything high and dry as far as money goes. But the number one way to get rid of it, to get rid of both of them, is to trim the size of the government. So we don't need hundreds and hundreds of organizations to run the state of Oklahoma. And the only reason we do have them right now is because we offer service after service after service that the government has no business offering. In case you want to know, the government's not very good at doing things. They're barely getting by with keeping the roads built. And if any of you are over in Ponca at all, the Caw Dam has been closed for months because there's a crack or something in it, and they don't know when it's going to be open. They don't even know when they're going to be able to start trying to fix it. And that's also a federal government problem because it's Army Corps of Engineers. But everybody that lives out there is driving an additional who knows how many miles a day, and that's just it's an unwarranted tax on all those people who live out there and use that road every day. Now they can't use it.
You can't drive across the
Nope.
dam?
Dam's closed.
I didn't know that.
The dam's closed.
Hey, but we are making progress on how to do it.
Oh, good. The bridge that's washed out
Yeah, no,
4 times.
this picture is posted today shows some of the structure.
Yeah. It's amazing that we can rebuild a bridge 3 times and it gets wiped out every time there's a flood. You'd think we'd figured out how to build a good bridge by now.
I think that's the plan when we do rebuild Hubbard.
Is to build a good one? Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But,
Yeah.
thanks everyone for your time. If you are still on board after all of that, I've got bumper stickers up here. I've got some yard signs up here. This campaign, as I mentioned, is not well funded as far as taking money and money and money. I don't necessarily need to take money because we're not wasting it. We're being smart with it. We're spending money when we need to, and the rest of the time it's sweat equity to get us across the finish line. So you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on X, and other than that, I've got yard signs here that are free for the taking. I don't charge for any of the yard signs or bumper stickers or anything. That's a fundraising ploy that we don't need right now and hopefully won't need throughout the campaign. So a lot of good people here tonight. Thank you for coming. If you liked it, tell your friends. Follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and be happy to have your vote on June 16th. Thank you.
But if you feel
I've got a couple of things.
donate $5 or $10.
Yeah, if you want to donate, it's jadenterrazas.com.
We've got a couple of things I want to cover. He mentioned the problems in Europe. The same problem is percolating here, but they're a decade or two ahead of us. The only thing that's going to solve this invasion problem is violence. Whether you want to admit it or not, that's the only thing that's going to fix it. I think Europe has waited too long, plus they don't have any guns over there. But any problem like this, the longer you ignore it and let it percolate, the more violence it's going to take to end it. So we've got to take care of our country. Don't forget the Saturday meeting, February 28th in Ponca City for OK2A. The primary, as he mentioned, is June 16th. It is important to get out and vote in the primary. I can't overemphasize that. And there's gonna have at least one other state question on this ballot. So it's important to get out there and get your voice heard. The Informed and Involved Tonkawa Citizens, we've got a Facebook page, and I'm gonna start paying more attention to that. I wanna thank everybody for coming, and we got a sharp guy here. I hope everybody can understand why I've been so excited since I've known him for 10 years now. So, any other comments or questions before we wind it up? Okay, very good. Thank you very much, folks. Don't forget, the candidate forums on May 30 at 1 p.m. and on June 5 at 12 noon.